Hi, I'm Ethan Broadfear, and today I'm going to give you a little background on physical filmmaking and digital cinematography and how the two forms are very different. For years, film has been the absolute standard of the industry when it's come to making movies. That's why most movies that everyone has actually seen have only been done on film. It's only been until recently, the past 10 or 20 years, that digital has become increasingly popular among filmmakers. However, with digital becoming more popular, it's also caused the practice of using film to dwindle, and it's really created an issue among directors over which one's better than the other, and has created a lot of conflict. But at the origin of filmmaking, it had a very humble beginning. In Tim Dirks' article of pre-1920s film, he discusses how really film was inspired by engineers and scientists playing with the idea of moving images. And this whole idea evolved into the invention of the Praxinoscope. Now, the Praxinoscope, essentially all that it was a wheel with multiple images and a lens in the middle of it with the lever at the bottom. And what you do is you peer through the lens, and as you turn the lever, it looked as if the images were moving of whatever it was depicting. And really, at its core, this was really one of the first primitive versions of a film there was. And it really inspired a lot of engineers and scientists with the idea of, well, maybe there's something to be had with this if we keep going with it. And that's exactly what occurred. With Thomas Edison, he created one of the first functioning cameras that ever existed. And though it wasn't largely his invention, his assistant Laurie Dickinson, which Tim Dirks also mentions in his article, he contributed a lot more to the invention than Edison did, but at the end of the day, a camera was finally invented that could film. And with this invention of the camera, it really spawned a whole new industry that had never existed before. In David Broadwell's book on the history of film, he discusses how in the 1940s the film industry absolutely exploded in America and really cemented its way into American culture. A lot of people saw that there was a profit to be had and it only made it popular. And with this profit that was going into it, new cameras were invented, new methods were made, and filmmaking was more popular than ever before. However, the only issue that really occurred with filmmaking is how much work had to be poured into it, especially with the editing process. For example, when you hear the term a cut, this originates from someone having to physically cut reels of film and then heat them back together so they melt into one reel, and then you'd have a seamless reel of film. And it was such a difficult task to do, and it took so long, and it was such a tedious job that there was so much error to be made because it was all done by hand and physically done. And directors, for the longest time, wanted a solution to this, and long years later, it came to the form of digital cinema. Now, with digital cinema, the main benefit is that physical film is cut out altogether. Instead of having to physically cut something, you just go on your computer and you edit it. And that's what directors like about digital so much. With Paula Bernstein's article, in where she interviewed a lot of directors at a Sundance Film Festival, the main thing that most of them said about digital filmmaking and cinematography was that the reason they liked it so much was not because it was better than film, but it was because it was so much more accessible. Digital is just so much easier to use opposed to film, and it's just more able to be acquired by many people who want to jump into the film industry. And that's why many directors today are switching entirely digital, including David Fincher, who released Gone Girl the past coming year, and including Peter Jackson, who director of Lord of the Rings, which these were done on film despite it being on discs. With The Hobbit, he actually filmed all those digitally. And he's one of the biggest proponents of directors moving in the direction of digital filmmaking instead of physical. And the only issue that this causes is that many people think that switching to digital takes away from the art of filmmaking because it gets rid of film. However, most people will admit that each one still accomplishes the same goal of telling a story, and it's just really two different forms of accomplishing that same goal. So at the end of the day, the art of storytelling hasn't changed in cinema at all. It's only the way in which these stories are told, whether it's digital or with film. And though film has been such a standard of the industry for the longest time, the introduction of digital doesn't take away from it, and both are just two different ways to accomplish the same goal. So, though digital and film contrast in many ways, they still accomplish the same goal and are still able to be used by directors everywhere.